and the next day, excuse me. And they go back, the state troopers and the forest rangers, and they actually find the guy, and he's upside down in the plane, and he's alive, and he survived the crash. And he wound up to be a drug dealer, and the suitcase had $60,000 in cash in it.
Inside the Line, the Catskills. Welcome everyone to Inside the Line, the Catskills, Episode 3. Tonight we'll be talking about a hotel that once existed above the great Caterskull Falls, and about one of my favorite topics of the Catskills, plane crashes. Enjoy! Alright, so we are recording. Welcome to Inside the Line, the Catskills. Tonight we have a very special episode. This is about plane crashes in the Catskills. Very passionate about this, and I've brought along my friend Joe once again to talk about plane crashes in the Catskills, because he is the Catskill king of plane crashes, the expert. He knows everything about anything of plane crashes in the Catskills. So say hi, Joe.
How you doing, Stash?
It's great. So what are you having to drink tonight, Joe? Anything?
I make my own wine, and I'm drinking some Petite Syrah that I made 2 years ago. Yes.
Oh, wow. Excellent. How long do you let that sit for?
I make it. It takes a couple of months to make it, and then I let it settle, and then I put it in oak barrels and leave it for a year, and then I bottle it.
Okay, excellent. That's pretty wicked stuff.
So it's like a year and a half old when I start to drink it.
Nice. That's wicked stuff. I remember you gave me some. I don't remember how it was aged or what it was called, but it was strong and it did its job. But Joe, any hikes since the last time we chatted?
Yeah, on Sunday I went with a few friends in Shari. Went up to Plateau. We went looking for a secret viewpoint that's on the south side of Plateau. I'm trying to think of the direction. And we found it. It's really a very pretty place to sit down and get a view. It's off trail. It's a little bushwhack. Yeah. Yeah,
those Plateau Sugarloaf sides are really demented with awesome rock face and stuff like that. So I've really always wanted to explore the western side of Sugarloaf off to the side, where it has that big, you can see from Plateau, the big, huge drop-offs and everything like that. Mm-hmm. It looks like it would be an excellent sort of adventure. But yeah, well, cool. Yeah, I mean, let's see. On Tuesday, I went up to Thomas Cole to do my trail maintenance. So that was beautiful. What a beautiful day to hike in from Barnum Road, and it was absolutely perfect. I love that hike. It offers a bit of everything. So very easy hike, but then I got up to Camel's Hump, and then I had to do some of my maintenance, and it was just a pain. It's a pain up there. You've been there probably many times. You know that section is full of prickers and goldenrods and everything.
Well, I hope you did a good job, because we're going there tomorrow, and we're going to do it as a through hike up there. So doing all three peaks. Yeah. Excellent.
Well, excellent. Please give me some feedback, because
I will.
I worked very hard on that crap, and it was it's not that easy going 2.5 miles in and hauling that stuff up. But I love that hike. It's one of my favorites. But yeah, no real Catskill news. I didn't hear anything about Hurricane Ida coming in and doing some damage. It was more further south down into the New Jersey area. So, but still, the creeks are going to be high. So watch what you're crossing, especially for some of the smaller streams might have a little bit of torrent to it, and it'll take you down. So just be careful. Rock hop, find easier places to cross. So yeah, let's get into our Catskills history. I like to do Catskills history every episode, and to bring people back and show them how really powerful the history is in the Catskill Mountains, and it really is. So Catskills history tonight is going to be about the Laurel House. So everybody knows about the big, huge, amazing Caterskull Falls. But do they know, like right above it, 100 feet away, basically where the parking lot is, was a hotel. It was called the Laurel House. It was built in 1852 and it had 50 rooms and it was a boarding house. Now, when you think of hotels, you think of also the Catskill Mountain House and the Caterskull Hotel up in South Mountain. Those were huge hotels that were expensive. They were open to top-notch guests and stuff. The Laurel House wasn't really for that kind of people. This was for, regular visitors and people wanting to have the experience of the Catskills. Now, it was in 1871. It was purchased by Jacob Former, who was from Wittenberg, Jersey, which is crazy that he's from Wittenberg and there's a mountain in the Catskills called Wittenberg. After the Civil War, the Laurel House went through its final large development, and between 1881 and 1884, the house was enlarged to handle 300 visitors. So just imagine being 100 feet away from one of the biggest waterfalls in New York State, and one of perhaps the most beautiful in the Northeast, besides Niagara Falls. I got to admit, that's pretty cool stuff, but Caterskull is really nice. The cost of staying at the house was approximately half the cost of the Caterskull Hotel and of the Catskill Mountain House, which is tried to draw more people, but since that area was so tight, it could only be so large. It was very close to the falls, almost a little bit over 100 feet, and it gave us outstanding views of the Caterskull Clove, which is amazing because you can only get that from the platform and from the top of the falls now of the Clove, and it had to be amazing. They also had a platform next to the top of the falls, and they also had a pulley and rope system for lowering refreshments to the visitors to the bottom of the falls, which was very, very odd because that feels like almost like a resort down in the Caribbean or something like that, and lower some alcohol down to when you're sitting on the falls. Can't really do that now, but people still do that now. They bring up stuff to the falls, and it's a little crap show. But yeah, for a quarter, visitors could have them release water dammed up to experience the massive flow of water over the falls, which is really neat. I gotta admit, I kind of wonder where they built the dam for that and to release it. It probably had to be up towards this north-south lake area instead of closer, but really wonder if there's any ruins. Joe, do you think there's any ruins left of that?
I have not really explored that area. I'm not that familiar with. I've only been there twice, actually, believe it or not. So.
That's good because it can be a crap show, but it's we'll have to explore it because I love that area. I've been there many times. It would be really neat to find where this dam was, if there is any remnants of it. Back then, they also had wooden steps from the top of the Caterskull Falls to the first water basin, which is pretty insane. That's got to be a scary, even coming down those stairs right now that are built into the side of the mountains that are rock is pretty scary. They also had wooden planks under the falls for the visitors, which is pretty neat. Probably underneath where this first basin is, where the first drop is probably got to be a pretty neat little experience. For those in that area, I'm pretty sure the trail still goes around the basin below the falls, and it still attracts a lot of visitors. And I couldn't even imagine walking out to the front of the hotel and getting that experience of the falls being right there. It's almost got to be like Niagara Falls with the hotels up there right now. It had to be an amazing experience. New York State acquired it in 1967 and burned it to the ground to make way for the Laurel House campgrounds. Today you can find a little bit of rock foundation within the forest. I got to take a look for it. I'm guessing it's over towards the parking area somewhere, but so there's got to be a little bit left there, but I highly doubt it because a lot of that place has been renovated for more parking areas. They've done a great job over there, I got to admit, with the new platform. It's accessible, wheelchair accessible, so a lot of people can see this beautiful experience up at Caterskull Falls. So I'm glad they did that, but it attracts a lot of people, and the people don't leave no trace. So just leave no trace and make sure you carry out what you carry in. I got most of this information from the amazing Catskill Mountaineer website. Check it out. Gives you information about the Catskills all over, information about the mountains, catskillmountaineer.com. Check it out. hopefully in the future I will have a interview with Mike Cantwell that runs that page. I'm looking into it, and I sent him a message, so I want to get him on here. So yeah, Joe, any have you heard anything about the Laurel House?
No, this is the most information I've ever gotten on it. Yeah. Really?
Nice. I'm a crazy fanatic about that hotel area. I'm also a crazy fanatic about the hotels down in the Borscht Belt when it was back in the 60s. So these are really cool topics to talk about, because you could just imagine having a hotel right by the falls, a hotel right by the edge of the escarpment trail, a hotel on the top of South Mountain. It had to be one heck of an experience. And seeing the pictures, if you go to the Catskill Mountaineer website, you'll see pictures of the old hotels, and it's amazing. You definitely got to check it out, because it's beautiful stuff. I couldn't even imagine if it was still in operations today, it would probably cost thousands and thousands of dollars to stay there. It would probably be open to only celebrities.
I mean, I would think they probably are similar to like the Mohawk Mountain House, or like that.
Good point. Yeah. Because they offer that view of the lake they have there, and it overlooks the Catskills and stuff, correct? On the other side of the Hudson Valley.
Yes.
Yeah. Is that really expensive?
Very expensive. Yes.
Okay, then I'll probably stay away from there. I gotta hike there once. I've never hiked there, so it's a long drive. All right. So hopefully you enjoyed that good piece of Catskills history. Tonight we will move on to our big topic of the night, which is plane crashes. It's one of the most passionate topics I'm probably going to have, and Joe as well. Joe is huge into the plane crashes of the Catskills. So, yeah, let's begin. So the Catskills have the remains of many plane crashes. The question is, where are all of them? A lot of research done by Joe and some research by me. Total plane crashes in the Catskills that are still intact or have some sort of debris could be over 30. We're still looking. Joe is mostly still looking. Overall total, because of some of the planes were actually removed, could reach over 40. Once again, we're still looking. We're still digging up for research. Mostly Joe. Once again, I'm going to give him more of the credit because he does a crap load of research. The earliest crash, to our knowledge, dates back as early as 1930. The most recent was 1989. So it happened a while ago, and technology has changed. So after that, a lot of people trusted the technology that we have now, and it made it safer for the pilots. Most plane crashed while flying under VFR, which means visual flight rules. Joe, you are a little bit more understanding of visual flight rules. Do you know a lot about it?
Not that much, but basically, it means just what it says. You're supposed to go when you can actually see. You're not supposed to fly through clouds, and you're supposed to have a ceiling that's above you, and you fly below that ceiling, basically.
Yeah, I that's perfect.
Because because you're not using any other technology except what you can see.
Yep, and back then they didn't have the technology we had. So flying under VFR, which is once again visual flight rules, made it a lot riskier. Especially if you didn't know where you're going, you had a lot of risk. And most pilots had these problems with the Catskills because of the sudden massive rise of the mountains. The Catskills don't gradually go up, like the Adirondacks, where there's little tiny peaks and then it gets up to the big Mount Marcy and stuff. The Catskills just seriously go up. That's why they have the escarpment. That's why, like Ashokan High Point and everything, they drastically increase right off of the bat from the Hudson Valley. And usually these pilots that got into these crashes were flying from the south. The south is definitely a lot lower. Usually the south goes down to around 1,000 feet, and some parts even lower. So when you're flying low and you continue low, all of a sudden the Catskills are there and you run into the mountain. Most of the crashes have ended tragically, but there have been a few that have survived. I think we'll talk about one weird one later. Once again, we won't be giving the locations of every one of these crashes because some of these very remote, very difficult to get to, and they're also basically memorial grounds. We don't want to wreck it for the people who have perished in these tragic crashes. So Joe, what got you into plane crash hunting and plane crashes in the Catskills?
Well, I know the first crash you're gonna talk about, the details on the Stopple Point, and that happens to be the reason I have a passion for locating the crashes in the Catskills. It basically started one day while I was bushwhacking to do my Catskill 100 highest. I was doing, the 100 highest peaks in the Catskills. I was doing from West Stopple Point to Stopple Point. And when I finished doing the bushwhack and I was nearing the Mark Trail, this was back in 2015, I stumbled upon the wreck. Basically, it's right on the trail and it's pretty much intact. I mean, most of the plane is there. And I was just in total shock, because basically we walked into it. Here we were bushwhacking and then we walk into this plane crash on the trail. And then afterwards, I started thinking about, what's the story behind this crash and how did it happen? And then I said, well, what are other crashes? And I just got into it in more details. And after about 6 years, I've amassed an incredible amount of details. And I believe there's close to 40 crashes in the Catskills. Most of them, I believe, are still there, or pieces of them are there. A lot of them, probably over 30, are pretty much most of the planes are still there.
Yeah, that's what is tough because when they say that most of them are still there might be a few pieces, and just imagine bushwhacking out in the middle of nowhere and trying to find these few pieces. Just a single engine could be very difficult to find in a bushwhacking region in the middle of nowhere that's been there for over 30, 40 years. So that's awesome, Joe. I'm just like you. I didn't go to Stopple Point, but my first plane crash sighting was on Caterskull High Peak, the lower one. I saw that and I saw the wreckage everywhere, and I instantly became attached. I was also looking for the second one, but I couldn't find it. I don't know how I couldn't find it. I wasn't a bushwhacking king at that time, so I didn't find it, but I eventually found it and I knew right where it was. And that's what got me into it. And I remember talking to you about it. Our first time talking about it was at our first STAR meeting, correct?
Yes. It was actually the wilderness first aid class we took together. I think we were talking about it.
Oh, yes, correct.
Right.
Yeah, and we talked about it through emails, but
yes.
Remember the wilderness first aid, we definitely talked to each other about it, and that's when we started sharing some good information. Mm-hmm. Once again, Joe and I are passionate about these things, so we're going to talk about a few crashes. Most of these are already known, and then we'll go into some that are more unknown a little bit later, but we're not going to give off locations. We're just going to give off some details about the crashes, because there are definitely some interesting crashes. I know Joe knows some interesting crashes, and so do I. So let's get into it. The first crash we're going to talk about is on the Great Stopple Point. About halfway on the escarpment trail, beautiful escarpment trail, heading towards Blackhead, there is a plane crash that's seriously right in the middle of the trail. You cannot miss it. If you miss this crash, which I think one of my friends said they did miss it, which I don't know how they could have. It must have been buried under snow. If you miss this crash, then you got to check your eyes, because it's right in the middle of the trail. The pilot was John T. Grace, flying a Piper P-828 with the registration number N1316T. He crashed on May 25th, 1983 at 9:40, and he was killed in the crash, unfortunately. Once again, the escarpment suddenly rises, and it's tough to navigate through those sudden rises if you don't know where you're at. He left Poughkeepsie at 9:12 and was flying to Watertown, New York. He had a revoked student pilot's license, so he was flying illegally, and he didn't file a flight plan, so nobody knew really where he was going. It was said that he had very low visibility due to fog. Fog's always a factor in flying in the Catskills. It's definitely tough to fly with the fog in the Catskills. And once again, this place is almost fully intact, like Joe said before. You seriously can't miss the crash. And talk about the hike there, you can approach it from different ways. I mean, there's from Scott Road, North-South Lake region, you can approach it from. You can approach it from where else, Joe? What's the other two? You can approach it from the Escarpment Trail from Blackhead. Yeah. You approach it from West Stopple Point, but that's a complete bushwhack, correct?
I'm looking on the map while we're talking. So basically, I usually come up from North South Lake typically, yeah. Or you can come up from Dutch or Notch from the north.
Dutch or Notch, that's right. The other one. That's the other.
Yeah, they're not.
Dutch or Notch it's a good easy hike.
They're not very long hikes.
No, I mean the one from North South Lake, if you come from Scott Road, it takes a total of 9 miles. It's a long hike, but it's not that difficult. But once again, you can't miss this crash. It's right there. What is it missing? It's missing the interior, right? The seat, or is it no? The seat's still in there.
Almost everything is there. I mean, I'm sure it's most of these have been picked clean, especially ones that are accessible, like Stopple Point. People take things which I don't recommend. I think that's horrible to take anything, but they're pretty much picked clean on the inside. I've seen some instrumentation on different crashes, but a lot of the stuff has been removed.
Yeah, and a lot of times, most of the times, usually the rangers or law enforcement remove some of that stuff for evidence to make sure. Like, of course, the black boxes, if they have black boxes on them. I don't know. I'm pretty sure. Did they have?
No, I don't think they had black boxes back then.
I didn't know if they had some sort of.
No, they didn't have anything. I mean, I think later on, some of the planes had beacons on them, but most of the planes didn't have crash beacons. Okay.
Especially the smaller ones.
Yes.
Like we said, you can approach it from North South Lake. It's a little bit longer hike. Dutch or Notch is steep as heck. I went there with Joe one time to go up Blackhead to search for some stuff, and I forgot how steep that was. You can approach it from. God, I'm sorry. I'm puzzling you with questions right now.
I have to go back to my map.
Yeah,
sorry.
No, I have my maps right on my computer.
You mean you can come from the bottom from Colgate Lake?
Is it Colgate? Okay.
Down in that area.
I thought Colgate Lake was something else, but
you get at the end of Colgate Lake Road.
That's what it is.
There's a parking lot, and you go around Colgate Lake Trail up to Dutch or Notch, and then over to Stopple Point. You can go that way.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, so Colgate Lake is a decent approach. The trail is not maintained as well as the others, but Dutch or Notch is definitely a good peaceful hike if you want to go. Not many people approach from Dutch or Notch. It's a great hike. I love that area.
It's a heck of a climb.
Oh yeah, that definitely pushes you.
It's a tough climb.
We had Chuck going on that day. Chuck did not like it that day. Plus he was injured. I thought he was gonna die, but yeah. So that's a great. If you want to go for a plane crash, definitely Stopple Point. The first one is a great one. Nice, easy, and it's fairly intact. Just remember, leave everything the way it was. These are basically memorial sites for the parish victims of the crashes. So let's go on to our next one. Our second one is Caterskull High Peak, the lower crash along the Snowmobile Trail. This is what got me into plane crashes. It's a amazing wreckage area. Most of the hike to the plane crash is trail, except for the last mile or so where it is unmarked. Part of the trail is also a snowmobile trail that is one of the worst hiking trails in the Catskills. It's not really a hiking trail, but it's just horrible. It's mud, nettles, no rock hopping. It's horrible. When it gets wet, it stays wet, and it's one horrible trail to go. But once again, it's a nice steady rise going all the way up to the snowmobile trail, and then you would take a left on the snowmobile trail, and you go. I forgot how far it was. It's not too far. It's probably like not even a mile or a half a mile in, and you'll start seeing the wreckage of this crash. It's just scattered everywhere. So much of this crash is all over the place, and the plane crashed so hard. The only sign of the cockpit was the flight control mechanisms, which are still there. Sometimes these flight control mechanisms and other parts are eaten away by porcupines, but most of this stuff is still there. It's just scattered everywhere. The path of the flight can be seen by the debris field. So basically, if you look at it from a certain angle, you could tell where the plane crashed. The engine is at one end, and smaller the pieces are further down the trail. So showing that the pilot crashed at a very high speed. Joe, Give us some information about this hike.
Basically about the plane. One of the things I like to do is I don't really verify that I found the crash until I could find the registration number. And it's interesting. This is the only one I could not find the registration number. And this was a Piper PA-32. And according to the National Transportation Database on crashes, it was N7146C. But I've looked all around every single piece that, as you said, scattered all over a couple hundred feet, and I could never find the registration number for this plane. And mostly every other plane that I've found, I think every other plane I found the registration number. I mean, I might find just a piece of it, but, it's at least verifiable. And this one was difficult. This one crashed on June 25th, 1987, with 2 fatalities. And if you read the report, going back to your comments about the visual flight rules, the crash report said it was determined because of clouds, darkness, and the pilot flying VFR into high terrain. So it sort of goes back to what you were talking about before. And again, it's hard to miss. It's right on the inner snowmobile trail. But the transportation report crash said it was because of clouds, darkness, and the pilot, again, flying VFR and not being able to see the high terrain because it was clouded over.
Yeah, if anybody knows the Catskill area, Caterskull High Peak. That just as seriously, it goes up gradually, and then all of a sudden Caterskull High Peak just appears out of nowhere. So definitely it's one of the peaks that can't be missed in the Catskills. You can't not identify it because it's got a distinct shape, but it's also super steep at the last, like 900 feet of the peak just rises. So definitely it's right on the escarpment trail. So like we said before, the escarpment and the sudden rise of the mountains, the most pilots don't know about it back then. They were usually from the city flying up north to the Adirondacks or to Vermont or something, and they had no clue about the Catskills, and they're right there. So definitely Caterskull High Peak is significant to plane crashes. There is another one somewhere on Caterskull High Peak we know, but we won't give it away. You'll have to find that for yourself, even though I remember one of my local radio stations giving it away, saying that it's on trail and everything when they don't know what the hell they're talking about. So, but what the heck? Let's see what search and rescue can do later on. Maybe that'll be a future search and rescue for us. But yeah, I gotta admit, the hike there is not that bad. Maybe about 50% of it is crappy trail conditions. Once you get further up on the top of the plateau area, everything becomes soggy and wet, and just it's not great trail. It's part of the long path. You can make it part of the escarpment. It could be part of the escarpment if you want to, but definitely the hike is a slog up there. And then once you get into that one snowmobile trail, it turns into a muddy mess. And I don't think I've ever had great conditions under there. But Joe, you thoughts on this hike and the crash?
No, I think you covered it pretty good, but I do agree the snowmobile trails, they're typically mud and nettles. That's what, that's when, if you ask me about Caterskull hiking, it's mud and nettles.
Agreed. All the way around it.
It's not the greatest place to go hike. Yeah. Definitely
agree. But yeah, the crash is, it's pretty amazing. Like we said, it's scattered everywhere. The engine is there almost fully intact. I'm trying to figure out, I haven't been there in a while, but I know a lot of it's there, but a lot of it's scattered everywhere. And like Joe said, you're right. I don't remember ever seeing a plane number, a registration number on that thing.
No, I've looked numerous times. Couldn't find it.
Maybe we'll have to get SAR up there and check it out, do a grid search.
Maybe.
It's a big enough parking area. We could do it. But yeah, so check it out. Caterskull High Peak, lower part of the thing. Make sure you leave no trace, and make sure you also leave all the plane remnants intact and where they are. Once again, this is a memorial site for the people who perished during these plane crashes. On to the next crash we're going to talk about is the good old Friday Mountain, one of my favorite hikes. Definitely, Friday is one of the best hikes, I think. Offers a lot. It's a 100% bushwhack. I mean, the herd paths are there now, but deep into the cirque of the Balsam Cap and Friday is a site of a B-25 bomber World War II airplane. This B-25 Mitchell saw action in World War II in France before returning to the U.S., and it was used as a training airplane. The crash happened on March 31st, 1948, and the story and investigation indicates that it was on a typical training run, which is one pilot and two trainees, when bad weather happened, and they tried to attempt to land at Stewart Air Force Base outside of Newburgh, which is, I think, around like 30 or 40 miles away.
Yes. The
only problem, they weren't heading towards Newburgh. They were heading towards Kingston. So instead of heading south, they were heading east. And unfortunately, them headed right into the Catskills. Once again, it's not part of the escarpment, but it really is. There is a sudden rise with Friday, Balsam Cap, Wittenberg, Cornell. These are massive mountains that go from 1,000 feet, 900 feet actually is where the Moonhaw starts, all the way up to 3,900 feet. So Fridays being only 3,600, but still they rise in a matter of 2 miles. So just imagine that once you're standing, if you check out the Ashokan Reservoir, you can see the sudden rise in the mountains. The Burroughs Range is right there. 3 people lost their lives in the crash, and one of them was never found, which is very amazing. I think Joe just brought this to me with this information. I never knew that one of them was never found. So I guess SAR is going on a bushwhack grid search. Getting to the crash site is a massive challenge. Slippery boulders, massive boulders, loose rock, wet leaves, like footholes that could go up to your knee. And once you get off of the rim trail of the herd path of Balsam Cap and Friday Mountain, it is a complete bushwhack. And you need to be experienced to get to this plane crash. Very experienced, because it seriously is right in the cirque, right in the middle of the cirque. And it is tough to get to. I think it took me 3 times to get to this, because I just gave up going halfway down to the boulder field. And plus I was solo. I was always solo doing this. Once again, if you need good gear, and you need to be an experienced hiker, and you need to have good navigational skills, because this crash blends in with the terrain like crazy. It took me a while. I was like right near it, but it took me a while to find it. Joe, you're know about this hike very well, so give us your thoughts on this.
I agree. The location of this crash is very difficult to get to. And it's hard to see until you get fairly close to it. The B-25 is the largest plane that has crashed in the Catskills. It is much larger than any of the other private planes that are scattered throughout the Catskill peaks. So it's an interesting plane to see because it's so large. It was a 2-engine plane. I believe the engines are still there. So if you want to go, I would recommend the best way. I mean, I know they call the herd path the rim trail. So if you go up the rim trail at around 2,700 feet, I would recommend side hilling over to the crash, staying on 2,700 feet. You can get there, pretty much hit it pretty much dead on, I think around 2,750 if you just side hill over to it. If you're a mountain goat, you can go straight up once you get to the crash and go back up to the herd path. Otherwise, if you're not a mountain goat, I'd recommend retracing your steps and go back at 2,700 feet back to the rim trail.
Nice.
And I do not recommend anybody bushwhacking by themselves. I know people do it, but I know I don't do it. So it's just too dangerous. I always go with somebody.
Yeah, I've definitely bushwhacked alone a lot because, my days off falls on a Tuesday and Sundays, and usually the stuff I want to do is not saying last second, but I'm just like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. And I've loved Friday Mountain. It's one of my favorite hikes, Friday and Balsam Cap. It's just the views at the top are amazing. The bushwhack, the experience is amazing. The 3,000 feet of elevation gain is amazing. And it being canisters, I love the canisters. I mean, they're just my thing. But Once again, this hike is really dangerous. If you're really experienced, then you probably know about this already, and you probably attempted to do it. But if you're a good winter hiker, it would be great to do in the winter, except for the fact that the plane would be buried under snow. But still, it is a huge plane. Joe, did this have turbines? No, it didn't, did it?
I'm not sure, Stash. Not sure.
No, I think it had propellers. I remember Ralph saying that the propellers were stolen.
Oh, you mean jet engines? No, this was not a jet. This was a propeller, if that's what you're asking. There are other jet planes that have crashed in the Catskills, but this is not one of them. No.
Ralph said a lot of stuff since the time it crashed has been taken, which is really unfortunate. And I don't know how they've done it in that remote area. This is seriously, it's not in the deepest part of the Catskills, but it's in a place where I don't know how you could steal things, but somebody stole the propellers and stuff like that, which is pretty sad. And once again, 3 people died. So just leave the stuff alone. Take a couple pictures, give your respects to the people who perished in this, especially to the people who were in the armed forces. My thoughts on the hike was that it was the one time I attempted it, and I attempted it twice, and then I finally got to it the third time. It was tough. It was very tough. And once again, the plane is kind of camouflaged. Wouldn't you say, Joe? It's almost like it's dark brown.
Yeah, it's that Army or Air Force gray that they use, yes, which is not dissimilar to the rocks.
Yeah, it's definitely hidden there, so it takes a while, and it's well intact. I gotta admit, there's a lot intact there, and it's, instead of being scattered out in the fields and you'll find something 100 feet away from the actual crash site, this is like right all there, and it's a great place to visit. But once again, give them your thoughts, because these people died while doing just a simple training, which is crazy. So we're gonna before we talk about more plane crashes, Catskills, tell me about all your research about this. So, like, you have done so much research, and it's amazing. I mean, you don't have to give away all your information, but, tell us about your hard work that you've put into this.
Well, going back to the Stopple Point crash, after seeing that, I mean, now this is going on for years, I started to do research on the internet, and obviously, and I found a website that archives New York State newspapers. But they digitize the newspapers, and you can actually search almost all the old newspapers in New York State. And I started researching for plane crashes, Catskill plane crashes. You have to do all sorts of crazy searches, and it takes a long time. But I found most of the planes that people don't know about through that. And I also searched, numerous hiking blogs. But before all that, the most informative one, which I think a lot of people know about, is the Charles Hayden website. And his posting is of crashes that he researched many years ago. And he lists a possible 23 crashes. And on those, out of those 23, he provides 5 GPS coordinates, and the rest are basically sketchy locations. And the other ones are things that he believes are possible crashes. He wasn't really sure, because he never really did the research, I believe, on the newspapers or other avenues on the internet. And as I said before, I believe that there's close to 40 crashes in the Catskills. Interestingly, there are only 2 that have landed on the trails, and that was Stopple Point and Caterskull. And the rest are deep in the woods that are basically been lost after initially being located by rescue peoples or stumbled upon by hunters. And they span, as you said, from 1930 to 1989 is the last one that I believe. I mean, I think there's some other ones after that, but in terms of the crashes that I recognize, they're from 1930 to 1989. There was actually one helicopter, I don't know if I ever told you this, Stosh, that crashed on Graham Mountain in 4 feet of snow in January. And the 2 occupants survived, but they were a little cold being on top of a mountain after their helicopter crash. But then they actually walked out, and they actually removed the helicopter. They slid it down the hill with some kind of a snowcat or something like that. Yeah.
Really?
Yep. That's in one of the newspaper reports I found. So, wanting even more details, I searched. There's a National Transportation Safety Board reports of crashes. And basically, it's hard to do on dates, but if you have the registration numbers, you can provide most of the details on the causes of crashes, like whether it was VFR or weather related or, pilot error. And so that's another piece of, database information that I found to do some research. The most interesting stuff, though, has come from the military. And have you ever heard of the Freedom of Information Act, which is called FOIA? Have you ever heard of that?
I think you have told me about it.
You probably have heard of it. Right. So you can actually, through one thing or another, I don't even know how I got onto this, but I started to do Freedom of Information Act to the United States Air Force for the original records from the 40s on the crashes. And they're actually in two different locations. The ones before, like 1948, somebody bought them all and the government didn't want them. And some private entity has those. And then after that is still in the military. But there's a lot still in the Air Force. And it sounds simple, but it was not easy finding the right locations for the records and then filing out these requests. But I stumbled through it, and I was surprised when they would send me these reports, or sometimes they would send it to me on actually hard copies, or they would send me, through the internet. They would be 60 to 100 pages long, in one plane crash. It was unbelievable. And if you look through these things, there were local witnesses, interviews, original photographs, sketches of the crashes, and of course there was redacted sections, stuff that was blacked out, I guess, because there was some military importance. So that's most of how I got all the research. But, however, because most of the crashes, like 90% of the crashes, represents a fatality, I practice what I call with respect. And I visit the locations. I do not disturb any of the remains, take any items, or post GPS points. And everyone that goes with me must have that attitude. And I know you do, and everybody else I've taken has lived up to that. And because people have died in these locations, as you said a few times before that. Most of the crashes take me, believe it or not, on average, about 2 years to locate. You get these sketchy reports, and then you do some hunting. There are never enough details in newspaper articles to locate, but they do provide a starting point. I sometimes talk to local hunting clubs. However, it always seems to come down to hiking to basically pretty horrible locations, and with one or two or three people doing grid searches, and usually with a few seasoned friends, we usually find that sometimes it takes me 4 or 5 searches. And I know you've gone on a couple with me, and we found once or twice we found planes, and sometimes we don't. That's basically my background and what I've done for the last couple of years.
Absolutely amazing. I got to admit, I love getting text messages in the middle of the day with some information about a certain crash we have been looking for. And it's really exciting to hear that and to see that Joe has found another crash, which is absolutely insane. There's a lot out there. And we've only mentioned a couple, and there are a lot out there. And Joe's put up some very hard work. So we also, like, Joe, out of how many have you been to so far? It's 27, right?
So far, yep.
Yep. I've been to 23, I believe. There are many all over the place. There's some on somewhat sort of trails. There's also one on Eagle Mountain right off of the trail. You got to do a tiny little bushwhacking, but there's very little remnants. Right off of the trail on Ashokan High Point. Once again, a little bit here and there. And there are some very interesting ones deep into the middle of nowhere, like Van Wyck. There's one in the middle of nowhere on Panther Mountain. Nobody will get to this unless you know your stuff. And they're everywhere. It's just amazing stuff of how this happened. And I'm not sure if you can find this anywhere else, this kind of stuff. Planes being intact, stuff still left there. The stories that Joe has told me of some of the plane wrecks. For instance, Joe told me of a plane wreck that happened in the southern Catskills of a guy who was in the mafia. He crashed his plane. He survived. When he was being carried out, apparently the troopers or the rangers found briefcases, and he said those briefcases need to be brought back with me. If you can bring them with me, that would be great. And that's that. I'm pretty sure they didn't give it to him, but correct. That's the information, correct, right, Joe?
Well, I believe he was a drug dealer, and he crashed, and they were looking for the plane, and they couldn't find the plane, and they gave up the search, and they said they were going to go back overnight, and the next day, excuse me, and they go back, the state troopers and the forest rangers, and they actually find the guy, and he's upside down in the plane, and he's alive, and he survived the crash, and he wound up to be a drug dealer, and the suitcase had $60,000 in cash in it, and he was trying to say that he was going to buy a house or something, and they all looked at him like, yeah, right. So.
Oh man, that's great. Unbelievable. Another interesting crash that happened in the Catskills. Of course, we won't tell you where this is, but one of the plane crashes had actually an air jet slam into the Catskills at 500 miles per hour, doing a training. And what we think, what theory of Joe I have, is that this plane was traveling a little bit too fast, tried to bank too quickly, couldn't pull up, and they smashed in the side of the mountains. This site is one of my I hate to say it, but it's one of my favorite sites. It's amazing. A lot of the crash is there, but scattered. And it's just an amazing story. Witnesses said that they saw a mushroom cloud because of how fast it hit the side of the mountain. Amazing stuff. Like, once again, the Catskills hold so much information about plane crashes. I've never heard of any other mountain range with this many plane crashes still there. Joe, have you? The Adirondacks don't even have this.
There's actually somebody, a forest ranger up in the Adirondacks, has done similar research, and I think he either wrote a book. I'm not 100% sure, but I talked to him to see if there was somebody down here that's done any research with that. I mean, really, nobody's done the research down in the Catskills, but he's done quite a bit of research up in the Adirondacks. I don't know how many plane crashes there are up in the Adirondacks, but this one forest ranger has done a lot of research. I forgot his name. I mean, I could look it up if I wanted to. Here's a good one for you. In 1958, a two-engine jet, a military jet, was doing maneuvers with a small one-engine fighter from World War II, and they were doing approaches, and the guy clipped his wing. And this was over Tremper in 1958, I believe. And he clipped his wing, and the plane basically exploded. He ejected, and I think 23 missiles fell down to the earth.
What?
Yes. And they spent a lot of time looking for these small missiles. I don't think they were very large missiles, but they were air-to-air missiles, and they spent quite a bit of time looking. They found them all, but that was an interesting newspaper article I read. So,
whoa, is that the crash that's in the middle of the reservoir?
No, the crash in the middle of the reservoir was two Sabre jets that crashed into each other.
Oh yeah,
and both of them crashed, exploded, and then fell into the reservoir. And I mean, there was debris scattered everywhere, but most of it fell into the reservoir.
Yeah, and I remember Ralph taking a picture of that when the water was severely low, and you could actually see something. But
right, there's an engine sticking out of one of the basins during low water. Yeah.
Once again, the stories of the Catskills amaze me. The history, like I seriously don't remember this stuff like in the Adirondacks. I remember one story of the Adirondacks, the one guy that crashed and survived like 3 days, but like I don't hear anything of all these plane crashes anywhere else, like ever. And it's just insane. And I don't know if there's like, I don't know, some sort of, they just leave it here because it's the Catskills or something, or they just don't want to remove it. I mean, it's been, since the earliest plane crash, it's been over 80 years. And, they're just like, yeah, let's leave it there. It's just it's very odd and very amazing. The stories here of plane crashes is absolutely phenomenal. And Joe, once again, I thank you for joining me tonight. Your information is absolutely amazing, and I love hearing all your stories.
It's been fun. It's been a lot of years.
Yeah, it has been. I mean, we've been friends ever since 2018, I believe.
Oh, I think before that. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I think
17 maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, we started talking before that. So,
Yes.
But I've been friends with Joe, and he's taken me on some wild adventures. So, once again, Joe, thank you for joining me on this great podcast, and this was awesome to listen to your stories. And I guarantee, I'm gonna try to get Joe on and hear as many as I can to talk about his adventures, because he has been on some wild crap, and he has taken me on some wild crap. Just the stories are amazing, and Joe has done so much for the Catskills. He's a volunteer. He is in search and rescue. He 3500 Club. He was on that for a volunteer. So Joe has done so much, and he deserves all the recognition for his work with the volunteers and his work on all these plane crashes. So once again, Joe, thank you very much. So that ends the first topic, or the only topic of the night. So I like to close out some stuff with new places to eat or have a drink in the Catskills. One of the places I recommend is in the northern Catskills. It's Sunday's Restaurant in Grand Gorge. Awesome place with a great variety of food, and also has ice cream. So if you want to stop on your way home, if you're living up north, check it out. Awesome place, great prices, middle of Grand Gorge and Stanford, so beautiful views in the mountains. Joe, you ever been there?
No, never been that far north in the Catskills. No.
I'll have to take you up there sometime. Any places you could recommend?
I really like the W in Palinville. Have you ever gone there?
I have not.
It's right on the bottom of the hill before you go up 23. It's a great breakfast and lunch place. Excellent, excellent food.
Excellent. Definitely check it out now. My wife and I think we plan on going hiking this Sunday. We're going to do something easy. I was going to take her on Big Indian and Fur, but Saturday night is the lighting of the fire towers. We're going to go on top of Mount U in Stanford and check that out. Of course, this will be published by the time that happens, but it'll definitely be a cool thing, and we'll definitely check that out. So we'll probably, what we want to do is like Wyndham High Peak afterwards. So we'll be around that area, so we might check it out. So excellent. Thank you for the recommendation, Joe. Once again, thank you, hopefully, to OER, Outdoor Equipment Rentals, for sponsoring us. Eventually, he might. I got to convince him to do it. It's Brad. He's a SAR team member, actually a SAR lieutenant, who makes up the amazing, horrible drills that we do. But I'd like to thank him for sponsoring us. You need personal locator beacons, GPS systems, GoPros, ice axes. He's got all the hardcore stuff, and he also has snowshoes to rent. So check him out if you need to. Outdoor Equipment Rentals. Once again, thank you, Joe, for joining us. And I'd like to thank everyone for listening. Everyone. Have a good night. And thank you for listening to Inside the Line, the Catskills. Good night. Good night, Joe.
Good night, Sash.